Hello everyone and welcome back to Calvi Homestead. In this video, I'm going to be showing you what we eat in a week for dinner on the farm or on the homestead. I'm actually starting out this week by making bread, and I will be sharing this bread recipe, but I'm trying to perfect it first for you guys before I share the recipe. But this particular recipe, I'm going to be using it to make 2 loaves of bread. So I start by mixing it in my KitchenAid mixer, but this particular bread, I knead it a little bit in the KitchenAid mixer, but I feel like it comes together so much better by hand, finishing it off by hand. And I don't know why. I wonder if I have the bread a little bit too dry, but like I said, I'm still perfecting it. I'm still working on it, and I'm hoping to have this recipe out to you guys soon. So I'm just letting the bread rise right now, and we're gonna punch it down and shape it. And I really have been loving making all of our bread products from scratch. And I'm working on a new series for you guys where I show you everything I make from scratch instead of buying it from the store, plus some fun experimental stuff. I do weigh my bread out, but this isn't necessary just to get even loaves. But like I said, having a scale isn't necessary to make bread, but every once in a while I'll bring the scale out just to make sure we get even loaves. Another thing I'm working on is how I like to shape my dough to roll it up into the pan. And I don't know if I'm overthinking this whole process, but I've been trying a few different ways to see what I like best. I know some people just kind of roll it up, throw it in there, and it turns out great every time. But I'm just a chronic overthinker, I think. So I'm always trying to perfect something. So I actually did like the way I rolled it up this time. I think it turned out really well. And yeah, this might be the way I typically do it. Again, I think this particular dough that I'm working with right now could be a little bit stickier to work with, which is something that I'm gonna have to do in this recipe testing for this bread. But otherwise, this bread typically comes out really well, and we really like it. We like the sturdiness of it. We like how it, just how it holds together, the texture, everything like that. So I just spray my pans and let them rise. And we will be using this bread in one of our dinners this week. And then the rest of it we kind of use for lunches. You can make grilled cheese, sandwiches, anything you like. But here I am shaping out the second loaf of bread. And like I said, the series I have coming up, I feel like is going to be pretty informative because I've been playing around with a lot of different recipes and different ways to make your homemade bread products. And I think it'll be really informative, and it's going to be an easy way to save money, cut out a lot of preservatives, just making it from scratch. I think it's going to be a really fun way to show everybody, how easy it is to make your own bread products instead of buying them from the grocery store. Yes, it may take a little bit more time, but in the positives outweigh the negatives in my opinion. So this time, I don't do this every time, but I did spray the top with a little bit of oil before they rose. I don't do this every time. I was just kind of playing around with it this time to see how I liked it. And then look at this beautiful rise on these. Actually, the one on the left is a little bit overproofed, so I let it rise a little bit too long, as you can see. And you can tell after it bakes, but they still turn out delicious and completely 100% usable. And Yeah, you can see that one. I tried to cut a line in the top so it wouldn't go too crazy, but it turned out fine. It just didn't look like the perfect bread loaf, but it still tasted like the perfect bread loaf. So look how gorgeous they are. And then the last thing I do with my bread, just to make sure it's not too hard and crunchy, especially if you're using this for sandwiches, you just brush the top with some butter, and that softens the crust, kind of like bread you would get in the store. It doesn't have a hard crust on it. This just helps the crust soften a little bit, so you don't have that harsh crush crust texture, and it soaks in and it turns out fine. And yeah, I can't wait to share this with you guys. All right, so we are finally getting into a dinner, and this is one of those nights where I had zero time and zero dinners planned, and so I pulled this out of my freezer. This is my homemade onion top and basil pesto, and I have a video of me making this, but I needed to defrost it because it was still frozen. And then I just seared up some deer steaks in my cast iron, and we use deer steak a lot, and we use it for a lot of stuff. A lot of beef recipes I can substitute. But there's the pesto thawed out, and then I had seasoned it with this caramelized onion butter from Kinder's, and then sliced it up. And then this is how easy this meal is. I boiled some pasta, added my pesto into it, stirred it up. I try to make enough pesto in the summer that we have it all season long until I can start growing basil again. And I think I'm going to make it this year. It's going to be cutting it close. So this is what a last minute dinner in our household looks like. And luckily, pesto is one of my son's favorites. So he was really excited to have pesto. Not so much the deer meat, but he does eat a little bit of it. And I thought I would take kind of a pause to show you what's going on right outside the RV. This is kind of, if you're facing away from the RV, this is off to the left. So there's right over there, that's the hog pens. And then all this wood, or most of it, I believe, is from a house from the 1800s that actually fell down or collapsed on itself. Oh, right over here. This is kind of like our sacrifice pasture. So the house fell down, collapsed right down the road from us, and my husband asked the farmer who owns the land if him and my dad could go salvage the wood. Dogs everywhere, as usual. And he said yes. So they're building this like three-sided barn out of that wood. Obviously there's new wood as well in there, but they saved a lot of money, and because there was a lot of tin over there that they scavenged. And hello, coffee. We always have coffee around here. And I thought it turned out awesome. Here I am dangerously working the tractor and filming while my husband has me raise him up to do some work up top. Oh, I'm sure I'll get some comments about this. I didn't do it the whole time, but I can use a tractor. But yeah, he just needed help getting up higher so he could measure some things. Here's with some progress going on. I think we have a roof on now. And actually, I need to film it some more because there's been even more progress since I've taken this video. But yeah, it'll be good to park. That'll all be filled in, all the open spaces. But it'll be good to park our cars under when it snows. Right now we have some hay under there, the hay trailer. So yeah, it's kind of a fun addition. So here I am dicing up potatoes. This is one of my husband's favorite side dishes. He loves diced potatoes. And yeah, they're super easy to make. All you do is dice up potatoes, season them up, and roast them. I roast them typically at a pretty high heat, probably 425. I have a lot of potatoes here, so I did add a decent amount of oil and then just season them up, salt, pepper. I probably use some garlic powder and paprika. And then I roast them at about 400 to 425 degrees just till they get brown and crispy. My husband loves like the crispy edges of the potatoes, so I always try to make sure I get some crispy bits in there. But yeah, super easy to pull together. Just wash the potatoes, dice them, season them, throw them in the oven, and you're good to go. You can do it, and you can mix all the seasonings with the potatoes in a bowl, but I just get in there with my hands and mix them in the pan I'm going to be using. And then here, I'll leave the recipe down below. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm making a patty melt sauce. And so it looks like I'm using mayo, some ketchup. I'll have to look up the exact recipe I used. Pickle juice, which was interesting to me. I don't know if I really recorded it, but I think I added a teeny bit more pickle juice in the end. Some mustard powder. Again, I can't remember if it called for mustard or mustard powder, but I was probably out of mustard. Paprika, it looks like. This actually was super good. I didn't really think the combination would be something that I would enjoy as much as I did. The big thing is, though, that you want to let it sit in the refrigerator. So I made it right after the potatoes. I made it and let it sit in the refrigerator. So tonight, I'm not going to take you outside and show you how I made these because it's dark outside, but I'm making smash burgers. So all I do is roll, burgers into a ball, put them onto the Blackstone, or you can put them in a cast iron pan. You set them on the hot oil for about 30 seconds, and then you smash them down, season them, flip them over, and let them cook until the edges are crispy. And then, since I'm doing a patty melt, that bread was a little thin slice there. I do toast the bread and butter on the Blackstone, or again in your cast iron. And then I used some provolone cheese and then this burger sauce with that toasted homemade bread and our diced potatoes. Let me tell you, the combination of this, I think we did double burgers and I couldn't even finish it, but look at this thing. It was incredible. It was so good, and we will definitely be making that again. All right, on to the next meal. We're still cold here in Missouri, off and on. I think we have some faux spring days that try to tease us, but we do have those chilly nights still. And ooh, we got a fogged up camera, but here I just sauteed up some onion and some butter, added some flour to make a roux, and now I'm adding some heavy cream and milk. Yeah, I think I go grab my whisk for this because I always whisk my roux. And that's just to thicken up the base. So basically what I'm making here in the bottom of the pan, I'm making a roux to thicken that heavy cream. But I'm just making the equivalent of 2 cans of cream of soup. So cream of chicken, cream of whatever soup. And so the bottom, then in the bottom here is just the equivalent of 2 cans of that. I have a recipe for this. I will put it in the bottom in the description where it actually calls for the 2 cans or a can of cream of something. And then we're adding chicken stock. This recipe here, my mom found it online somewhere, and we've jazzed it up a little bit. And it is just a no-fail recipe. Right now, I'm adding the equivalent to a packet of ranch, dry ranch mix, because I buy that in bulk. And then, you know, we're just doing some seasoning. So oregano, garlic powder, probably some onion powder in there, salt, pepper, that kind of stuff. But this recipe is a no fail, super easy, super delicious. Everybody that has tried it when I've made it has loved it. You can see I'm cooking in the Instapot here, but I don't pressure cook it. I'm just using my Instapot to simmer in. So that is our base there. And then we're adding all of our potatoes. And I just let this simmer a little bit until all the potatoes are soft and cooked through. And it is that easy. I will leave the recipe down below because you have to try this and let me know what you think. Because when I first saw the recipe, I'm like, that's too simple. You know, there's no way. But it's delicious. The original recipe calls for frozen diced hash browns, and that's what I usually make it with, but this time I used fresh potatoes and it turned out perfect still. And this is what it looks like. Actually, I think I forgot to film a portion of this video because you do actually melt cream cheese in there. And then I topped it with some of my freeze-dried chives from the garden last year and a little bit of cheese. And yeah, super delicious. Next, I'm going to brag a little bit about this one because this is a beef chuck roast that we raised and grew here on the farm. And look how beautiful it is. I am still in awe and just so proud that we raised this, and it is so delicious. And still, every time I open my freezer to pull out any beef, I'm just so proud of us. Anyway, here is the bone that I cut out of the center, and I will save that and keep that for beef stock later on. And you can see my dogs were down there. They're always at my feet waiting for, you know, any scraps to fall for them. So I'm just cutting this beef super thin. I just stuck it in the freezer for a little bit so it got super cold and to make it easier to slice. But look at that. Look how gorgeous that is. I can't help but admire it. And I'll just throw these scraps and the bones in a bag and throw them in my freezer until I'm ready to make broth. So in this bowl, I had to make more brown sugar, but I'm going to make the stir fry sauce in this bowl. And I just start out with 3.5 tablespoons of brown sugar, and I'll post the recipe down below so you don't have to get a pencil out, but it's 2/3 of a cup of soy sauce, 1/2 cup of broth, 1/3 a cup of rice vinegar, 3.5 tablespoons of brown sugar, and 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. And I always add a little bit more sesame oil because I just love sesame oil. I think I add like 3 tablespoons of it. And then I didn't feel like mincing up fresh garlic, so I added some freeze-dried garlic powder right there. And this is like raw garlic. So I just blended it up with a little bit of water and freeze-dried it raw. So it still has the raw flavor when it's reconstituted. And then I have some freeze-dried ginger slices that I'm just gonna powder up in there a little bit. And because I didn't have any fresh ginger. And if you don't have any fresh ginger at home, you can use powdered ginger, no problem. And if you don't like ginger, then you don't have to put ginger in it at all. That's the beauty of it. And then I'm just going to stir this. I want to make sure that my ginger, and mainly my ginger, gets reconstituted in the sauce. Luckily, I'm making it enough ahead of time. I'm making it before I brown my beef, so it's ready to go. But I want to make sure that it has time to reconstitute the ginger. And then right before you put it in the pan, I didn't wait, but you add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and mix that in. Just make sure that right before you put it in your pan that you stir it again, because the cornstarch will settle to the bottom, and the cornstarch will help thicken up your sauce. So here we are, we're about to brown the beef, and you want to make sure you're using a high temp oil. You see that oil smoking there? You want to get your oil super hot, and I used a little nub of beef tallow, which is just beef fat, because it has a really high cooking temperature. But oils like extra virgin olive oil, they don't have, or it doesn't have as high of a cooking temperature. So you could use avocado oil or just regular olive oil, not extra virgin. Those have a higher cooking temperature. So you want to make sure to put your meat in the pan in a thinnish layer. Don't overcrowd it too much, because you want to brown it. You want to get a nice brown color on it if you're using beef or pork. Again, oh, there's a little friend. Again, always waiting for something. If you're using chicken, you do want to get a little bit of brown to it, but maybe not quite as much as beef or pork if you're using chicken breast. But this recipe works with any protein. But beef and pork, you want to get a nice brown color on. So typically when I make this, I have to make it in batches, because if you overcrowd the pan, you're going to steam your meat instead of browning it, which you don't want to steam it. The browning of the meat adds so much more flavor, and it also has such a better texture. So here I am. I made sure to re-stir my stir-fry sauce, and I'm just putting it right back into the same pan. If there's too much oil in the bottom of the pan, just drain it out. Add your stir-fry sauce and let it come to a simmer. Once it comes to a simmer, make sure you're stirring it constantly, because it's going to start to thicken. But once it comes to a simmer and it starts to thicken, turn your heat down. And you can see, look at that beautiful glossy sauce. It's so delicious. And I'd say let this simmer for about 5 minutes. And then if your meat wasn't cooked all the way through, then go ahead and finish cooking it in the sauce. Mine, since it was beef, I'm happy with, it can be a little underdone for me, basically. So I'm just going to stir to coat everything. And if you need to simmer it a little longer, you can. Just make sure you don't want to burn this sauce in here. So make sure you cook it on a lower heat now, because you do have sugar in the stir fry sauce, which will burn really easily. So it looks like I have so much extra sauce, and that is because I did not have any veggies to put in this. So typically I'd roast some broccoli and then toss it in the stir fry sauce or something like that, but I didn't have any, and I just wanted a quick meal and to put it all together. And yeah, so I just put a bed of rice down and then add the meat on top. But look at that beautiful stir fry sauce covering that. So glossy, so beautiful, and so delicious, and way better than any takeout. And then, of course, I love to top it with some green onion for flavor and texture and a little bit of freshness, especially because we didn't have any vegetables going in this. But this is one of our favorites, and it's so easy. I feel like the meals this week are so quick and easy, so I'm excited to share them with you. This meal that we're starting here is not particularly quick and easy, but it is at the same time. So here I'm starting out by showing you guys that I'm making cornbread. And this is a recipe that I had never tried before. So it was my first time making it. I will leave the recipe linked down below, only because I've made it again since this, because my husband has claimed that it is his favorite cornbread recipe. Now, if you're used to traditional cornbread, this is not it. This has a different texture and flavor, but it is so good. And you can see here, I use extra virgin olive oil, because I was out of my light oils. Um, and it didn't really make a huge difference because this recipe also gets butter. So the recipe kind of has a bigger ingredient list than I would typically try, but it sounded and looked so good that I had to try it, and I'm glad I did. Now, I probably won't make it every single time I make cornbread because it is a little bit more in depth. Not in depth. It just has more ingredients than maybe necessary. Um, it also calls for buttermilk, which I never have. I never carry buttermilk. So as you can see here, I'm making buttermilk by measuring out my milk and then mixing in some lemon juice and letting it sit. And that kind of curdles the milk a little bit, gives you that tangy flavor that buttermilk would give you. But yeah, I've made it since this time, and it was delicious. It turned out beautifully. I don't even put honey on my cornbread. I just put butter, and this was perfect. But as you can see, I don't know if you can tell here, but the milk was a little bit thicker because it had curdled a little bit because of the lemon juice, which is kind of a neat trick if you don't ever buy buttermilk, which I don't. And then butter, so it has oil and butter. It is a lot looser of a cornbread, so it's a little bit crumblier, I guess you would say, and not as dense, definitely more airy. But you'll see when I pull it out, how it looks. You'll be able to tell. But yeah, look how thin that batter is, and you have to make it in a preheated skillet. So you preheat your cast iron, add a little bit of butter to it, and then add your batter to it before you bake it. And it's just part of the process, I guess. It turns out so good. It's just not traditional, which I know some people just prefer traditional cornbread. Um, so yeah, it was interesting. I found it on a reel, and I didn't save the reel. I just wrote it down real quick, which I should have saved it, but so the reason I'm making cornbread is because I'm making chili. And I swear, every time I make chili, I never make it the same way more than once. I don't know why. Chili is just never something I've used a recipe for ever. And so I just started off, I think I used 2 pounds of our homegrown ground beef, some onion, seasonings, your typical chili seasonings. Sometimes I Google chili seasonings, sometimes I don't. I do know that if you're making your own chili seasoning, you will use way more chili powder than you think humanly possible. Look at this chili powder. I think I ended up adding more too. And I think I did look at a recipe one time for a chili seasoning mix, and it called for like 6 tablespoons of chili powder. And then it said under it, yes, I know that's a lot of chili powder, but trust me, that's why they call it chili. And then these are not black beans. These are actually like a red kidney bean that I had pre-soaked and added there. And then we have some canned tomato juice. You can see it's separated, but all you do is shake it a little bit and it comes right back together. I added a quart and a pint of tomato juice. And oh yeah, my little can opener, so you don't damage your jar lids. I'll link that down below because this thing is amazing. But I added a quart and a pint of tomato juice, and I probably only needed the quart because my husband likes a thicker chili, and I don't think I needed that extra pint. And then I also added a pint of my crushed tomatoes, again, the beans, the seasonings. Like I said, I make chili different almost every time, so it's like a surprise every single time. This time I did pressure cook it, probably about 45 minutes. And yes, here's the cornbread. So you can see it's a little bit looser than your typical cornbread. It was so good. Mine only needed butter. And here's the chili that you can top with anything you want. I hope you all enjoyed the meals we made this week. And if you try any, let me know. And I hope you like and subscribe. Bye.